a safe and appropriate speed and for the road environments. So if I can draw your attention perhaps to the recommendations report first and foremost, and highlight some key changes as a result of the consultation process. So the key changes, the road that we received the most overwhelming amount of feedback on was actually Bailey's Beach Road. So there were a lot of different views there, wide ranging, some who obviously didn't want to move the speed limit as it currently stands at the moment, and just the differing views on that, both positive and otherwise. So another couple of key points to note would be Te Koparu Township. We heard about the amount of transitions. There are going to be numerous transitions there that would have been, from what the submitters have said, is quite confusing for the driver, and just so we've listened to that, we've taken that on board, looked at the technical report and reviews, and we've taken that one into account. The other two is Te Koparu School, so having a 30 km/h permanent area, but reduce the size of the school zone. So that was overwhelming feedback. A lot of the submitters have also said that they support the reduction of speed around school zones. And the final one I wanted to just draw your attention to was also Red Hill Road as well. So seal section 60 to 80 there. So we have heard from what the community have said through this consultation process. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you so much. Hey, my internet cut out just then, so I missed a bit of what you said. Sorry, can you just recap what was the Te Koparu School conclusion?
Of course, yes. We can look to the recommendation report too, which is sort of explained better in full, but mainly that it's decided instead of having a variable, a permanent 30 km/h speed limit around the Te Koparu school there, and also reducing the size of the school zone, so condensing it around the school itself.
Right. Okay. Can I just clarify, because I thought there were still options to consider, whether it's variable or whether it's fixed.
Right, yes. So in the recommendations report, it's lined out. There is two options there, and perhaps when we go through, we can have a look at that in more detail at that point in time. But yes, you're correct. There is an option there, of course, if that's more preferable. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page.
Yes,
Thank
understood. You. No trouble. Thanks. And I think probably the other point to speak about would be infrastructure improvements. And would you like to speak to that, Elizabeth?
I can, sure. So realizing that the changes to speed limits also require some changes to infrastructure. What will go along with this package of changes are enhanced signage and gateway treatments for populated areas. So the welcome to and Harimai for each village area, a raised crossing to support the school zone, particularly in Te Koparu. We're looking at the existing zebra crossing, formalizing that into a raised crossing. Enhanced line and edge marking to really delineate the corridor, and a review of all of our curve warning signage to make sure that that's still appropriate. I think the other thing to highlight is we're doing this as an interim speed management plan. The review of speed limits will become part of our overall regional strategy and be reviewed every 3 years. So this is not our one shot forever. This is an interim plan again, and part of that is the monitoring that goes on afterwards to make sure that we've set the speed limits appropriately, and that rolling review every 3 years. So, yep.
So I wonder, so Gavin, so in terms of going through the recommendations, shall we move to the options and the recommendations report there?
Through the chair, yes, and think just for the panel, and for ease of and for Anand as well as we're going through. I was discussing earlier with the chair and with Rachel and Natasha around working through just for ease of decision with the recommendation, because there are options there, is that we work through attachment B with the options and then if there are changes that the panel wish to make, then just let me know, and then I'll reflect that change in the recommendation. So the recommendation will say, accept attachment B with the following amendments, and we can reflect those in a list. So that's, I think procedurally, that's probably the easiest way without us going through a off-the-cuff redraft of recommendations. Yeah. So that would be my advice to the panel.
Just a little distraction there, everybody. Yes, we've got a lot of work to do here if we're going to go through and analyse each different recommendation. I'm just trying to go through and work out the best way forward. Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you. I was just wondering, would it be quicker if perhaps we just discussed the ones that we want to discuss, right, rather than each and every, because I mean, I've been through each and every one myself, and most of them I'm comfortable with, but I do have a few that I did want to raise concerns with. Would that be with your lead, Mr. Chair? Perhaps that would be an easier way to do it.
Yes, by all means. I'll let you go first, Councillor Wilson-Collins, and you go through the ones which are of concern to you, and I'll give Councillor Williams the same opportunity, and I'll go through also. I want to hear from Annan too later on after we've gone through. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So you're quite right, Natasha, in your presentation that Te Kōpuru and Bailey's Beach were the ones we heard the most about and had the most submissions about. So Te Kōpuru, for me, I just need some clarification around that too, because I am obviously not an engineer, not a roading engineer, but I can only compare Te Kōpuru Township to what has been done in the Dargaville Township around schools and speed limits, and perhaps there's changes coming for Dargaville Township. But at the moment, I find it difficult to reconcile having a huge town, not huge, but comparatively larger area of Dargaville Township, a 50k area. But then we're talking about the different speed limits in Te Kōpuru of 40 and 30k. So I can't quite reconcile why we're wanting to have the different speed limits. But if we have to decrease them, then I would like to see Te Kōpuru Township all at 40, except the Domain Road, which I agree would be 30, and the Te Kōpuru School would be variable. So it would be during the school hours that speed limit would be reduced, just as it is and seems to work well in the Dargaville Township. Then moving on to Bailey's Beach, the Bailey's Coast Road that you spoke of. I drive that road regularly, and I also drive the Kaiwi Lakes Road regularly, and I can't help but compare the propositions. And Bailey's Coast Road being reduced to 60 kilometres an hour just doesn't make sense for me. And I believe that for these speed reductions to work and to actually be safer, they have to make sense, because otherwise we'll just get drivers speeding anyway, or getting frustrated with other drivers overtaking in ridiculous places and things like that. So for me, the Bailey's Coast Road, I would really love if that could be reduced to 80 rather than 60 k's an hour. Then moving on to Mount Wesley Coast Road. I just wasn't clear why we had, I think it was 3 different speed limits on the one road. Maybe you just want to explain that more to me before I decide where I'm sitting with that one. It just seemed like quite short bits of road as well. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, thank you. That was eloquently put, and a lot of the feedback that you've put together there as well was what we heard from the community as well. So yes, perhaps should we go one by one? So about the school zone first, shall we address?
You want me to speak to
no,
that?
yeah,
Certainly.
thank you.
That wasn't all of them. I just shall I
Sure,
finish?
sorry. Yep,
Sorry.
yep,
No,
sure
there's
thing.
just two. Sorry, just two more.
Okay.
Kotor Road to Mount Wesley Coast. Oh, sorry. Yeah, from Mount Wesley Coast Road to Norton Street, 19 or 80. I'd actually prefer if it could stay 100, but I don't think I'm allowed. So yeah, I mean, if there was no reduction on that stretch of road, I'd be happy. And just the West Coast Road on page 69, that was an interesting kettle of fish as well, with all sorts of different speed limits. So those were my concerns.
Great. No, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Perhaps, yeah, it's good. We do have a road safety engineer here. So if I can introduce Elizabeth, if you'd like to speak to some points there, and we can address them as, yeah.
Thank you, Natasha, and through the chair. So starting with school speed limits. Under the setting of speed limits rule 2022 and Road to Zero, we have two options for setting speed limits around schools. One based on a Category 1 school, which is pedestrian activity within the school area. Certainly that is Te Koparu. Can be set at a 30 km/h permanent or variable speed limit, with variable being an option only if a permanent speed limit cannot be set in that area. Noting the fact that school activity and pedestrians around school frontage are not limited to 45 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes in the afternoon, that often there's after school activities, students going back and forth. So a 30 km/h permanent speed limit is our preferred option based on those vulnerable pedestrians. In regards to the setting of speeds in Doggerville Township, you're exactly right. We're doing this on a catchment by catchment basis. Doggerville Township is the next one off the ranks for KDC, and you'll see similar proposals there. We can't treat, unfortunately, the entire district in one fell swoop. However, for Te Koparu itself, we have heard from the hearings, heard from community as part of the feedback that people were supportive of that lower speed limit around schools, but not the size of the school zone we have. So we've shrank that back, and the residential streets surrounding it are now recommending 40 km/h, similar to other residential streets in Te Koparu. And Norton and Poto, rather than having all of those changes, or a 40 km/h permanent, you'll see in the recommendations report that we're recommending a 50 km/h through Te Koparu remains, noting that that is a connecting street for community. The residential streets off of it proposed at 40, but Norton and Poto proposed at 50. Anything to add for Te Koparu before I move on?
No, that's good. I think it was definitely important to note the setting of speed limits rule that we're sort of governed by, whether it's a Category 1 or 2 school. So we've got that to contend with as well.
Absolutely. And Te Koparu is absolutely a Category 1. And again, our preferred recommendation is a 30 km/h permanent. However, can be considered to be a variable speed limit. And I'll let councillors deliberate on that. Moving on to Bailey's Beach. Absolutely, we heard you, and I'm the first to admit that we got it wrong with our 60 km/h speed limit. And you'll see, as a result of the feedback received at the hearings and re-examining Bailey's Coast Road, that's now proposed at 80, as discussed at the hearings. The next one was Mount Wesley Coast Road, is that right? So we have two different speed limits on Mount Wesley Coast Road, a 60 km/h proposed, and then a longer section of 80 km/h. So again, removing some of those transitions. And lastly, help me remember,
Sorry, Councillor, you might have to.
That's all right. It was Poto Road from Mount Wesley Coast Road to Norton Street.
Right. Okay. So we certainly understand that through the hearings that the overwhelming preference is to leave Poto Road at 100 km/h. In order, under the new setting of speed limits rule, to retain a 100-kilometer-per-hour speed limit and have that a safe and appropriate speed, we need median barrier to prevent those head-on crashes at 100 kilometers per hour. Unfortunately, council or Wakakotahi are not funded currently for that sort of investment in Poto Road. So the safe and appropriate speed through our analysis is 80, and that's what we're recommending for that area.
So 90 can't be an option?
So 70 and 90 under the setting of speed limits rule are only for very special and specific circumstances. They're looking to have a more consistent throughout the country speed limits, with 80 being the recommended speed for roads such as Poto, such as Red Hills Road for the sealed section, for example.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. And the last one was just West Coast Road.
West Coast Road. And the question on West Coast Road was what? I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind.
It had variable speed limits as well, and I just wasn't clear on that one. Page 69 of the report. Well, of the one that had all the gunk in it. Had all the explanations and recommendations.
Absolutely.
That one, rather than just
I'm just getting there on my report. I'm sorry, Councillor. Thank you.
That's okay. It was more just an understanding for me on that one, not necessarily that I want to change anything, but I just didn't quite understand why there were the several. And of course, we're going to get all the questions when this comes out.
Of course.
Thank you.
So we're now proposing, we had multiple speed limits again on West Coast Road, and have changed some of those. So starting with the portion of West Coast Road that used to lie within, the Tecopero school zone. We've removed that from the school zone now, so it will be 40 within the Tecopero Township, consistent with other residential streets within that area. We then are recommending a small transition zone as you leave Tecopero proper in that peri-urban area, where you have a higher density of vehicle crossings, a little bit more activity of 60, and then moving on to 80 for the remainder. Certainly are willing to take feedback from council in regards to that transition area, because I know those multiple changes of speed limits are one thing we've heard back from communities that they are not in favor of.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. That's me, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to move on.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
Hi, dear. Look,
just before you start, I realise it's not in your area, and some of these roads you may not be familiar with, but just don't think because Councillor Wilson-Collins has mentioned on things, if you want to go over and clarify matters, feel free to do so.
Look, most of the roads and the discussion we just had were things that I'd already written down. So it was good to get clarification on that. The other area is the unsealed roads going from 100 down to 60. We heard from submitters that, on certain roads that they didn't think that was necessary. I just wondered about, I think it's Rehitai Road. They'd said that a submitter had said that there was good visibility and they thought 80 kilometres might be better on that road. Obviously, I'm not familiar with it, but I just thought I'd just point out for that. And also Scotty's Camp Road, I think we had a submitter that came and spoke to us. A lot of submitters didn't support down to 60 and preferred the 80. So on some of these roads, is there scope for it to be 80 rather than 60? Because it's quite a big drop. So yeah, I just thought I'd raise those roads.
Certainly. Yeah, Tasha, do you want to say anything on that first, or?
No, probably just the technical side. I think so the critical part here, if that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the chair, I'll speak first to the 60 kilometer per hour on unsealed roads. As you've noticed, for the most part, 60 kilometers per hour is our starting point for the unsealed network. The submission from AA was supportive of that 60 kilometer per hour on the unsealed network, and we believe really on our unsealed roads that 60 is a safe and appropriate speed. It certainly drives differently, say, than an 80 kilometer per hour sealed road shoulders if we're looking at Poto, Bailey's Beach, for example. So we are recommending that the maximum speed for the unsealed network is that 60 kilometers per hour. In regards to Scotty's Camp Road, as well as all of the other roads, we again, to be respected by drivers, need this to be a self-explaining speed. So at 100 kilometers per hour for Scotty's Camp, we don't believe that that is self-explaining. At 60, because of road geometry, narrowness of lanes, the environment in which that road is in, we believe 60 is the correct and self-explaining speed on Scotty's Camp.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so that will be across the board, 100 unsealed roads, 100 down to 60 across.
That is
All right.
what we're recommending. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty much it from me. As I say, yeah, Erin had covered off on those other roads. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Yes, my turn. I'll go through what Councillor Wilson Collins has gone through. Te Kaupuru, I'm very, very concerned about that area because even in the report that you've put through, I think driving from one end, from say the Southern Rugby Club through to the hill going down towards Aratapu, I think there's 7 different speed zone changes, and that's unacceptable. That is just confusing for motorists. That is one of the major issues that we've got. I'm going to ask Anna later on about the variable speed signs because I know that they are hugely expensive. I know that they take a lot of maintenance, and I know they're prone to breaking down. However, there are certain physical features in Te Kaupuru which don't allow a higher speed. And I'm talking about the right angle corner and very steep corner on the corner of Bickers Road. Now that's a self-regulating feature of the land or the contour, the topographics of that area that cause a speed reduction. I can't understand the 30k zone going around the corner past the old Te Kaupuru garage up towards the fire station. I really can't understand that from Bickers Corner. Bickers Road corner, I should say. I agree with the school zones going down to 30 and residentials going down to 40, but I think we've just got to simplify it right down and just as you're coming into one and then you're coming into a school zone. We've got to get this right. As you said, we're going to be spreading this into Dargaville as well. Bailey's Beach, we are starting that transition from urban, from a rural road to urban to a beach road. And I think we're heading down the track of all the beach roads will be 30 kilometres an hour and people who will access that beach via walking. Some of the speed zones or proposed speed zones in the Bailey's Beach area are impossible to reach that speed anyway, because I take, for example, the little Ambergris Road, for example, it's only probably 75 metres long. So a speed limit on that is unenforceable and unattainable, really. However, you cannot enforce, the law enforcement cannot enforce within or cannot apprehend people within 250 metres of a speed zone change. So I'm very aware that we don't want to create a toothless line and just put these signs up that we aren't able to enforce or become speed traps. Mount Wesley Coast Road, I probably know this better than most. We have a gravel road going to a sealed road, going to the museum, then going to the urban area. So to get in there would be numerous different speed changes. And I'll park this question that you can answer when you finish off. Is there going to be a limited speed or a 30k speed zone around the museum and cemetery old golf course entrances? This creates a lot of confusion as well. What other notes do I have here? Yes, and going through what Councillor Williams asked about with Rahudai Road, Scotty Camp Road, if we keep that to that consistency of gravel roads being 60, adequate rural sealed roads being 80, the urban areas being 40, school zones being 30, I think everything is going to fall into place if we don't get too clever on it. That's what I covered off here. During the last year or so, I have made observations on what the adequate speeds are for gravel roads. 60k is more than adequate. If you've got one of these big four-wheel drives, sure enough, you can travel a little bit faster. And if you're an avid fan of the WRC rally, those people will say that you can travel a heck of a lot faster. But with corrugations, mixed surfaces, mixed weather, it is a good 60k is a good solution for those gravel roads. That's my opinion. So I first want to now go on and I'll ask the NTA and you guys to reply to me, and then I will pass it on to Annan after that to talk about these signs and these electronic signs and how reliable they are. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the chair, starting in Te Koparu, I agree that our first proposal had far too many transitions. However, we have listened to that feedback, and if you turn to the map, which is on page 108 of my report, I'm assuming the page numbering is the same. We now have through Te Koparu Township 2 speed limits from the rugby club 50 until you hit the school zone, at which we're at a permanent 30K, and then from the end of the school zone, 50K again out of town. Noting that the residential streets, we have signed at 40. But if you are traveling through Te Koparu, for example, you only have those 2 speed limits, a 50 and a 30 around the school zone.
Can I just, sorry, am I looking at a different map here? I'm looking at option 3 on page 114 of our report, our minutes, and I can see from, I can see too many, I can see numerous different speed zones you're going through, not what you're describing.
If I'm traveling, I guess what I'm describing, if I'm traveling along Poto Road towards Te Koparu from Dargaville, I'm at an 80. I have a single transition to a 50.
Yes.
And then the transition at the school zone to 30.
Yes.
And then back to 50. So a consistent 50 outside of the school zone area. And then back to 80.
Okay.
All of Te Koparu on the through route, 50 kilometers per hour, with the exception of the school zone, which we're proposing a permanent 30 kilometers per hour. I don't know if that's helpful to understanding, or if you had more questions around the speeds in Te Koparu. Yes.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins.
It's not helpful that we have similar surnames, is it?
No.
Just so that you're aware, Elizabeth, those maps were actually really difficult to read in our agendas, and so I think that's why we don't that they're there and we've got them, but you zoom in and the writing is so tiny on the legend you can't quite make it out. So that's probably why there's a little bit of confusion there with us. Sorry.
My apologies for that. If this panel was to recommend a variable school zone, 50 would then be the underlying speed throughout Tacopero with that 30 km/h variable for the school zone. Again, what we're proposing is a 30 permanent with infrastructure to support that, such as a raised crossing to, again, along with that 90-degree bend, help with the slowing of speeds. So that was Tacopero. Next was...
would you like to go back to the beach area? Is it going
into Bailey's Beach?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, any other questions on Tacopero? Sorry, before I move off of that one.
I still have grave concerns that we've got two different speed zones on two different streets in Tacopero, mainly the 50, the 40, and the 30. It's just too confusing. I really think we've got to stick to the KISS syndrome of keeping it simple. But anyway, we'll carry on. No, that's I think we've done Tacopero to death now, so we'll move on.
Moving on to the 30 km/h proposed speed limit within the Bailey's Beach community, where we see a high level of pedestrian activity, as you described, on streets, and why Bailey's Beach has been set as a speed limit area, noting that that mix of vehicles and pedestrians is quite common within the roads of Bailey's Beach. We're recommending a 30 for all of those beach side communities. Bailey's Beach being one example, Glink Scully, which we got quite a bit of feedback on as well, being another example. We have a short transitionary area, again, from near the golf course, from that 80 km/h that we're proposing for the rural section coming into town, really transitioning 40 until you reach the township proper. In regards to the enforceability, we have made sure that all of the speed zones that we have set are within the setting of speed limits rule for minimum distance. By making Bailey's Beach a speed limit area, it reduces the amount of signage we need to do, because you only need those signs as you change speed limits. So all of Bailey's Beach at 30 would be covered by our gateway signs going in. Again, reducing that confusion. The next one was the road by the museum. Is that correct? So again, we see a large number of walkers and the active transport. And again, through the museum and the cemetery, we are proposing 30 for that location. It hasn't come up yet, and I guess I'll just speak to it really quickly while we're talking about beach communities. Glink Scully. We did hear through feedback, as you'll see in your recommendations report, the desire for a 10-kilometer speed limit along the foreshore area and creating a shared space. We are not recommending a 10 km/h at this point in time, only because in order to create that, we really need a shared zone and the placemaking to take happen behind the scenes to create that shared use zone, which has to be done under special bylaw. So I'll just bring that up as well.
Just have a question on that.
Yes.
On, I think it's Marine Parade that goes, that's the Glink Scully, that's where it comes down. Somebody mentioned about speed bumps that have been graded out. With this staying at 30, will the speed bumps be reinstated as part of this work, or?
So that could be considered. I don't remember the comment. I apologize about the speed bumps being graded out, and I can talk to our maintenance folks about reinstating that between now and then. But yes, traffic calming such as speed humps definitely supports that 30 km/h environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, did I answer each of your locations? I'm sorry, I should be writing on the side as we go.
No, Yeah, I think you've covered it off. Yeah, I just want to avoid the confusion for motorists. Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's if we have too many signs, it creates too much of an issue as far as slowing down, speeding up, slowing down, speeding up, and the how should I put it? The creation of hazards with nose to tails can be more of a problem, and sometimes the solution that we're looking for creates more of a problem than what we're trying to solve. With a motorist travelling at 80k along a sealed road, and then all of a sudden there's a 60k sign and it's not seen, the motorist in front slows down 20k, and the possibility of nose to tails can create more of a problem than what we're solving, because there are very, very few crashes on these roads where how should I put it, legal speed is, or driving to the conditions has been an issue. And by putting up road signs in the belief that that's going to create a cone of behaviour, I think is flawed. Just like pedestrian crossings don't stop you getting run over, and yet pedestrian crossings are one of the most dangerous bits on any road. But how many people walk out on pedestrian crossings because they believe cars have got to stop for them? And if we believe that people are going to abide by speed limits because there's a sign there, without enforcement, we're dreaming a little bit. But it's just that issue of those nose to tails with sudden speed zone changes in certain areas, which is of concern to me. Yes, when I drive into town from my place, I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before I've even hit Dargaville. 5 different speed zone changes I've got to go through coming in from Mount Wesley Coast Road. I really don't want to see that too much throughout the district, or where we're heading, so to speak. But yeah. Has anyone got any further comments from the panel? Been discussed, read those last issues. Councillor Wilson-Collins?
How did you know I'd have something to say? Yeah, no, I actually just want to thank you, Natasha and Elizabeth, and your team. You've actually shown that you've listened to the feedback from the community, and you have made adjustments where you can. And I realise how tied you actually are by this new law that's come out during the process that we're going through. So I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, I do kind of understand sort of the constraints that you're working with, and that you've done the best, I think, that you probably can. I do recognise what you're saying, Mr. Chair, with having to go through several speed changes when possibly at the moment there's only 1 or 2, and the frustration that might cause. I think if someone's following a car that's reducing their speed and they nose to tail, that's bad driving. Personally, sorry, but I mean, if someone needs to brake for an emergency and someone runs into the back of them, I mean, that's nothing to do with set speed limits. I mean, those are sorts of things that are just going to happen, and you're not going to avoid them. So I think with the things that I've been through, I'm confident now about the changes that have been made. I guess the only thing I don't think that we've settled on yet is whether the school in Te Kopuru is a variable or a permanent speed. And I hear some dissatisfaction from the chair about the 50k on the main road and 40k on the residential roads. But I actually don't. I think that's sensible. That makes sense, and I have seen that in other towns where the main road is a normal speed limit, and if you pull off onto any residential road, it drops down for safety. So yeah, so that's fine with me, unless there's anything else that anyone else thinks we still need to actually land on to be able to give this recommendation to all of council? Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Williams, anything further there?
No, look, I agree with what Erin has said, and obviously I'm not, I don't drive that area a lot. I know from Kaiwaka Mangawai with that review, and that's all changed now, there is frustration with, 4 or 5 different changes. So yeah, it's just not overcomplicating things like Gordon has said as well. But I think, yep, you have listened to submitters, and I think it's probably about as good as it's, going to land. There'll be, obviously people be frustrated. You can't please everybody, but it's something that we have to do from the government. So yeah, I think it's pretty much there for me.
Thank you. Yes, my concern wasn't the speed zone changes for locals. They get used to it and they manage it. It's people who drive by GPS and warnings in their cars, or visitors, where they suddenly see something and they brake. Now, I want to go to Annan and just ask him about the cost of the signs, the costs of the variable speed signs, and if he could just, or any other matters that he wishes to bring up in relation to the discussion today.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I certainly agree with you in terms of we need to limit confusion, and agree with you that if we can have some consistency in terms of less variability moving through 30, 40, 60, up to 80, would certainly help. In terms of the signs, the electronic signs, they are reliable if they are maintained, but would obviously just want to use them within the school or residential area. Outside of that, they'll be prone to vandalism, and fixed signs are more appropriate. In terms of the cost, it's probably something that we need to go away and just figure out with those service providers. I understand that they are so. We'll just need to go away and understand the costs associated with those, with the service providers that actually fix those, and depending on the location. There's also a maintenance aspect of that, obviously, and so we need to factor that in.
Could you, if possible, also just discuss the possibility of raised crossings and the effect they have, not only as far as maintenance goes, but
I think raised crossings are fit for purpose. So they need to be where they are going to add the most value, and certainly around schools, and in some cases shopping areas, most certainly. But we've got to make sure that we don't overdo them. I mean, I've seen streets where they're quite close apart. And you sort of wonder, what value is that adding in addition to the speed restriction that is placed on that section of road. So, I would say on a case-by-case basis, we should be quite detailed in terms of where they go, and not just placed because, they around the country, I've seen them placed quite close, and I'm sort of wondering myself why that is the case. And we want to make sure that we learn from those cases where people are questioning, and we agree as to the spacing of those raised platforms. But certainly, from a safety perspective, raised platforms and islands do provide better safety for pedestrians.
Yes, thank you very much. One thing which I don't know if a lot of people have considered, but I've discussed this with logging truck drivers and the like. They will not slow down for the raised islands. They'll hit them at the speed limit that is there at 4:05 in the morning. There's a heck of a racket as they go over. It can actually be quite disturbing to residents with them. So you must also consider that. It does provide a natural physical obstacle for reducing speed, but in the case where Te Kaupuru is, that right angle corner at Bickers Road also does the same.
So just through you, Chair, I do agree with Councillor Wilson, Mayor and Collins around 100 is a safe speed limit on some roads, and I sort of appreciate that. You do need the barriers if that is the case, if that's the national direction. But certainly, if there's opportunity to go to 90, that would be a far better proposition where the road has a condition for driving at 90 k's. I mean, I certainly travel quite a bit between Auckland, Dargaville, and Mangawhai, and some of the roads through Dome Valley, even though they are barriered, they're still sitting down at 80. And there's no reason why some of those roads couldn't be pushed up to 90, but still safe to drive on.
Right, I'm just looking at, excuse me for me looking away, but I've used the luxury of having my large graphic screens here to have a look at all the maps beside me. So rather than peering into the small laptop, right. Is there anything else which I'll first ask the staff from NTA on which they wish to discuss while we're here?
Anything else that you want to add?
No, I think I just want to, thank the panel for the kōrero this morning, just for talking and deliberating and understanding where the legislation explains this is why we need to do things this way, or what the purpose of the legislation is as well. To really, if you look down to the purpose, we're creating these safe and effective speed limits for these different zones, and the technical report and all the work that the NTA team have done and their contractors to put together, right, this road shall be at this speed and this is the reasons why. So all of that technical input behind that as well. So it was, again, just want to thank all the submitters as well for the consultation process to really understand, okay, what is this going to mean when this is implemented, and to bring you the recommendation report today and the options there for the panel to deliberate on.
Yeah, nothing else to add from me. Just thanking again the panel for your time and for the consideration given to some very long and dense documents. So very much appreciate that.
Anything from Annan? Anything further?
No, nothing further, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Wilson Collins, have you got any other discussion on anything that's been brought forward?
No, nothing except the deliberations themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Councillor Williams?
No, I just had a question on the funding of this. What is KDC's portion of the expense to put this into action? Like, how is it paid for, I guess is what I'm asking, just out of interest.
So through the chair, I can speak to that. This is a project that's funded in our current LTP period with the normal Waka Kotahi FAR rate, which for KDC, somebody's going to have to help me there, 63%? 62. Thank you very much. I work mostly in the far north, and so keeping the FAR rates for each council is hard, and the remainder would be KDC funds.
Right. Okay.
It is currently budgeted, so no budget implications for the decisions being made today.
Okay, so it's all costed, and yep, that's all in the budget. Okay, just wanted to check. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Now that leaves us to go for, and I'd refer you back to page 5 of the agenda and the 3 options that we do have. And I'll just go through them so that the people out there who are listening in can recognise what decisions we have to make. Option 1, the panel may accept the recommendations made in the recommendations report This option would accept the technical assessments made by the staff and enable the next stage of implementing the new speed limits to be undertaken. This is the preferred option in our report. Option 2, the hearing panel may accept the recommendations report with amendments. If the hearing panel decide on any amendments to the recommendations report, staff will need to make additional assessments to ensure that those amendments meet the requirements of setting of the speed limits rule 2022 and the National Speed Management Guidance. And option 3, the hearing panel may reject a recommendations report in its entirety. This option is not recommended as it may result in the need to reconsult. So, Councillor Wilson-Collins.
I have a question, sorry, and this might be for Gavin. So, Mr. Dawson, rather. So those options there refer to the recommendations report, but the recommendations report has options in it, whereas is it meant to be referring to the final interim speed management plan?
So, sorry, through the chair. Yes, so that was what we, when I had looked at it last night before preparing for this. So that's why I've suggested at the start of the meeting that we refer to those options. That is attachment B, isn't it? Attachment C, sorry, that we're looking for. A recommendations report and attachment A, sorry.
Yeah.
And so what we can do just to simplify the process is for where we have the options, we just state option 1 or option 2. So if there's any that the panel would like to change that are not in the report, then we can just state that what they are. If that's clear to everyone here. So we're simply noting what we want to amend from the report.
So just to clarify, Mr. Dawson, are you wanting us to go through the recommendations report and choose option 1 or option 2 where there are options?
Where there are options in the speed, so when you go through the roads,
yeah.
If you want to deviate from the preferred option, then we just need to state what we want, and then I'll note that as an amendment, and that's recommended to council.
Okay. So through the chair, the first option, I think, if I go through that report, is that speed limit around the Te Kōpuru school and whether it's permanent or variable. So shall we tackle that?
Yes, and we need to be quite clear on this, and we've got to make sure that we're all referring to the same document. I'm looking at table 1 as we go through on page 32 of the agenda, and it starts off with Agnes Street. Am I on the right page, or are we going to be talking cross purposes here?
I'm looking at the recommendations report, which was attachment A. And it's the one that has all the explanations. It talks about all the feedback, why they're setting the speeds, and then a few of those items have options and explanations about the options. It's the 110-page document.
Starts on page 16, I think, or 15,
Yes.
16 for Te Kōpuru.
Yes, I'm on page 16. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Okay, right. So brace yourselves. We've got to go through all this. So
yeah. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I also have another meeting at 11. So go.
Yes. Right. Page 16, 5.2, Potu School.
No, above that one. Sorry, 5.1. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Te Kōpuru School, 5.1. Starts on page 15.
Sorry, it is page 15. Yes, Te Kōpuru School, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, the options are on page 16, but yeah, starts on page 15. Yeah.
So this is the variable or the permanent? Is this the question that we're asking amongst the two councillors? Yes. So what is your preference, Councillor Wilson-Collins?
My preference is variable.
Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I think variable.
Yep, I'm the same way
You the
too. I
same?
think I think this creates a consistency through the area because we've got them outside the Dargaville schools. So we immediately go into option 2 overall with some recommendations of small changes. Yes, am I correct there, Mr. Dawson?
Yes, so I'll pop in there. So 5.1 is option 2.
Yes.
Mhm.
5.2 Podu School, no question there.
Mhm.
We'll just quickly go through. Bailey's Beach 6.2.
Just got to get to it.
The next option is 6.2.1.1.
Yeah, 6.2, 1 point.
Page 19.
Yes,
Bottom of page
yes,
19.
yes. So on that 30K, are we in agreements? Just put your hand up from the two councillors if you're in agreements.
30K? Yeah.
Okay.
Option 2.
So that's option 1.
Yes. Mr. Dawson, are you keeping up with us here? You're following us?
I am. So just give me. I'm just quickly taking notes down while I'm doing this. So for 6.2, you wish to go
Sorry, I've misread that. I'm with option 2.
Oh, I mean proposed speed limits.
Yes. Sorry, you're
Yeah.
signing too. Yes.
So that's for 5.2. Yes, 5.2.
No, we're at 6.2.1.1.
6.2.1.1. Yep,
Mhm.
and that is option 2.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was the recommended option. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. If that's just through the chair, if there is no change from what's been recommended, then we'll just go through to the next one, and we'll only note what you wish. Yes. Yeah.
Right. The next one is 6213 Bailey's Coast.
Option 1.
Yeah. So that's fine.
Yes, I agree.
So 6213 is, what was that again? Sorry, option
Option
1.
80 kilometres.
Yep.
And we'll move straight on to 6.3 to Coperu in general, not just the school, but in the township. 6.3.
So
This could be one of contention.
I think we've already we've already chosen option 3, haven't we? Because we've already decided to vary.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah, I believe that is the option. We need a little bit more work on that.
yeah, I agree.
Yep. Option 6.4 as read. Option 1. Oh, hang on, sorry.
No,
Option 2.
Option
2,
2.
80.
Yes. The 80 kilometres on the sealed area. Yes.
Yep.
Sorry, which number? 6.5 or
6.4.1.1.
6.4.1.1, Red Hill.
Yep.
6.4.1.1, option 2.
2.
Cool.
The next one, 6.5 Marine Drive. Option 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
5.1.1.
And that's all of them, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
And where's Mount Wesley Coast Road? Did that come up? No.
No, it wasn't there. But I believe you can still make a suggestion
Right.
for a different option if it fits within the legislation, I believe. Not to speak on behalf of our staff. I'm sure they know better than I do.
Yes.
So for
Been paying
6.5.1.1 through the chair, option 1 or option 2?
6 point.
Option 1.
Option 1.
Option 1.
Mm.
Yep.
Now, my suggestion is we have discussed a little bit about Mount Wesley Coast Road around the museum in that area there. I believe that there's natural features there which naturally keep the speed limit down to that 60k mark. However, because we're sending Te Kaupuru back, my suggestion is we send the Mount Wesley Coast area around the museum back for further work. That is my suggestion as a chair and as an individual. And I don't mean to leave you to the end, Councillor Williams, but I'm just going through the same order. Councillor Wilson-Collins, your feelings on that?
Can you direct me as to where in the report I can just quickly double check the speed limits around there?
Yes.
Is there a map of that area or? Oh no,
There
don't
is.
worry. I think I found it already.
Okay.
I haven't got it online.
Oh
it
yeah, that
moved?
was, sorry, yeah. That was in my notes. I spoke about it earlier.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, so what is your suggestion then for the speed limits there? Because
So
I've got,
if we have a look at page 52 of the agenda, it's got quite a bit
Yeah.
of information there about that. And even reading through it, for a small road, there's quite a few references to it there, the southern end.
Yeah.
So there, and we've got a current speed zone of 100,
yes,
and then we've got options of a 60 and part of it 80 and part of it 60.
Yes.
My recommendation is that we send that back along with Te Kaupuru School to have another look at, to see if it's appropriate that it cuts back to 60 and then it will cut back up to 80 when we reach intersection of Podu Road, and then back down to 60 as we come into town, and then back down to 40 as we go along Liverpool Street. I just think there's too much there coming from.
and understand that, Mr. Chair, but my understanding is that today we are making the decision of what we are recommending to council. I don't believe it is going back to staff. So I think the idea is that you need to put forward a suggested change, which we can then deliberate on.
Yes, I believe that Te Kaupuru School is the Te Kaupuru area is going back to staff because we've decided,
No, we've just done that
option.
deliberation.
I stand to be corrected. Okay, right. We'll go on to the Mount Wesley and we'll decide what we're going to do there. And we're always going to have a decision here because there's only 3 of us. So you've heard what my thoughts are. I think it should stay at 80. Councillor Wilson-Collins, your thoughts on it?
I'll need to ask you a question considering this is your road. Is there is part of it unsealed? Is this why it's reduced to 60?
No.
Or is it all sealed?
No, it's completely sealed. It's got some pretty sharp little corners in, which
Right.
self-regulate the speed. But what the added thing is, you've got people leaving a side road, which is Old Golf Course Road, which is where the cemetery is, and you've got another cemetery further down, and you've also got people coming out of the museum, and that's what's dropped it down to that 60 recommendation, I believe. I'm getting nods from NTA.
Correct.
So then why is it 60 at the southern end, if I know my north from south?
At the western
So,
end,
I can understand the 60 k area along that. I mean, to be honest, I always turn up that road and I never know what the speed limit is anyway, and I always assume it to be less than 100 because it's the museum and as you say. So 60 there makes sense, but then it turns to 80 and then it turns to 60 again. Is that correct?
what they're proposing is that as you come in from the west coast along the rural sealed road, and I'm sure the staff from NTA will correct me here if I've got it wrong, and as you approach Old Golf Course Road, just on the western side of that, it'll drop down to 60.
Right.
And then it'll remain 60 right down to the intersection with Podu Road, and then it'll crease up to 80, and then quickly down to 60 again as you come around the corner, coming towards Park Road, and then you'll drop down to 40 in the future as you go into town.
Okay.
And I'm thinking in about 2K, you've got 4 different speed changes.
But isn't it already 50 going around Park Road? It's already 50. It's 50 as soon as you turn onto the.
So the speed change is right near that intersection, which is confusing. So that would probably have to be moved anyway.
Well, so not knowing the road inside and out, I think that 60 is appropriate for that area past the museum and the cemeteries. But then perhaps the rest of the road should just be 80, and as the chair is recommending that's self-regulation. That's one way I think to reduce the changes in speed, but I think still keep an appropriate speed where we do now have several, as you say, walkers and dog walkers, and pressure from the community to make that a walking track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds good to me. What Erin has said, I think it's meeting that safety, and then you have the 80 once you get past there, and it's lessening the changes. So yeah, I agree with that. So
the big thing is that the footpath has been extended around the corner and up to there, and that footpath, in theory, at present, is on 100k speed zone. So yes.
Yeah. So dropping that area to 60 makes sense.
And are you suggesting that it changes at the museum entrance or past the?
No, the 60k area should be from. Well, I don't know. Is the 50k is just after that corner, so it should, I suppose, be 60k from when you turn off onto that road until past the second entrance of the cemetery, of the new cemetery.
Right.
But I'm now just pulling that out of the air because you put me on the spot.
No. You're right. You're on the right path. You've got the right visualization of what they wanted. Staff from the NTA, can you help us out there?
Through the chair, directing your attention to what on my report, attachment A is page 45, just so I can confirm. Mount Wesley Coast Road from Poto Road to Old Golf Course Road, we are proposing 60. Am I understanding through the chair that 80 for that section?
Sorry, you cut out just at the wrong time. Sorry?
No, that's perfectly fine. So Mount Wesley Coast Road from Poto Road, the intersection of Poto Road, to Old Golf Course Road, we are proposing as staff 60. That area is currently 100. Am I understanding correctly that the chair is in agreement with that speed limit? Perfect. So no changes required there. Just moving to the next section. Mount Wesley Coast Road, the southern branch of the fork onto Poto Road, currently 100, NTA proposing 60. Is that what you were saying is the correct speed limit there as well?
No.
So the chair is proposing 80, is that correct?
Yes.
Gavin, are you following where I'm at in the report so we can make those changes? Just checking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What page are you on for that one? I'm just screening through the report.
On my attachment A, I'm on page 46, although the numbering is likely out of whack because it's attached to the agenda.
page 46, and this is the table with the table.
Sorry,
Correct.
I'll interrupt as the chair here because I think a bit of confusion's been added. This is from number 455 Mount Wesley Coast Road. That is where the road turns from tar seal to gravel.
Okay, I'm with you all, Mr. Chair.
And so my suggestion is that when we go to gravel, it goes back down to 60 to keep that consistency right throughout the district.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is what is proposed currently. So the only section in question for me is Mount Wesley Coast Road, the southern branch of the fork onto Poto Road. Currently 100, we're proposing 60.
Yes, the confusion that there is what is it around Poto Road at Mount Wesley? Is that now a 50k zone?
So Poto Road at Mount Wesley, going back up to the previous page, from Poto to Old Golf Course, currently 100. We are proposing 60. The speed limit transition from Poto back towards town is outside of this current catchment.
Rightio, thank you.
Just a question of clarification. When you're saying the southern part of, you're talking about when it loops around and comes back down near Aratapu, right? Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Proposed 60, and my understanding was the chair was wanting to change that to 80. Is that correct?
That was my view, but it's not necessarily the view of the board here today. I'll take my further direction from the other two councillors. Thanks.
I'd need to ask another question, just to understand. And I did read everything, but I can't like. But you'll have the answer right at your fingertip. But just the thoughts around that 60k on that turnoff. Are there a lot of houses down there, or what? Why? And if it's sealed, like why is 60?
So it is sealed because it is what I would call a peri-urban area, and because of the density of intersections, we felt that the 60k and for that shorter distance of the loop around was the more appropriate speed to 80. However, certainly 80 kilometers per hour is one of the options that we considered, and I'll leave it to the panel to deliberate.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Then I'd be happy with 80. It seems consistent with what that stretch of Poto Road will be as well. So
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, look, I'll go with that as well. I'm not up to visualising all these roads or anything, but if you two are in agreement with that, then I'm, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
At 80, yeah.
I will just add something. Unfortunately, it's on the border of the Dargaville Township, which will have to be deliberated on too. It would be so much simpler if everything was 60 or 40k in Dargaville, and then it would flow on. It would stop all the changes. But that's something which I'll probably be asking once we go to the Dargaville deliberations and planning. We may like to extend that out, include Mount Wesley Coast Road, and then go over that again. That's my recommendation. But at this stage, our panel here has recommended that be 80 right to the intersection of Poto Road, Mount Wesley. Councillor,
just to clarify, in the 6 minutes I've got left, that we're talking about the same intersection, because the intersection we've just spoken about is not near the Dargaville Township. It's down by Aratapu.
No, it is just around the corner.
No. We went over that first, and we talked about that being 60, and then we talked about how it turns into 80, and then when it loops around and comes back down to Aratapu, because I just asked that question of the staff, the southern tip. The southern tip, we're saying to keep it 80. So the intersection by Dargaville, where the museum and the cemetery is 60, and then 80 going around. Is that what the staff understand the discussion we've just had is? Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that you're on the same page.
Yes.
And through the chair, we acknowledge certainly when we are doing catchments that butt up against each other, it's always that awkward transition between existing speeds and new and proposed, which is why we have that ability for you to come back on a every 3-year basis to re-examine, to make sure we're getting this right.
So just to confirm with you, are we able to come back and readdress that with the Dargaville and include that in the Dargaville wrap up?
Through the chair, you absolutely have that opportunity, both through Dargaville and as part of our regional speed management plan, which will be going out for consultation later this year.
Thank you. I think that's a sound decision and a simple one to keep it with less confusion until then. Thank you very much. Mr. Dawson, I think we've covered off everything, have we not?
Yes, so I'll just fill in the amendments to the recommendation. So if you can just give me half a minute and I'm nearly there, and then I'll pop those up on screen. We'll just find a mover, a seconder, and then we'll put that to the vote.
While Mr. Dawson's doing that, I'd like to thank everyone for the effort this morning. It's it can be quite confusing, but I think we've nutted it out to a good resolution. Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins.
Sorry, my internet just cut out again. What's happening?
No, we're just idle chat until Mr. Dawson gets the recommendations up
Oh, perfect.
within the next minute, so you can get away.
Okay. Juggling too many hats today, I tell you. It's fine. As we do.
Okay, so we've got there. It was like typing out bits of statute there for a while, but I'll just share the screen and share. So this is the recommendation that we have before the panel. So we've got the amended the amendments to what was originally published. Yeah, so I'll leave that to the panel now.
Just take a little time to double check everything.
Excuse me, Gavin, may I interrupt for a moment?
Yep.
The comment before from the chair about Mount Wesley, shall we include a note there about the discussion to minute that?
Yes, we can. If you can refresh refresh on that, and I'll just put a comment here. Notes.
Yes. So I believe it was yes.
So line 1 of the table on page 46 of the report, Mount Wesley Coast Road, southern branch of the fork onto Poto Road. Currently, our recommended.
So is it remaining, or is it, what's the difference from?
Amended from 60 to 80.
Okay. It means Mount Wesley Road from 455, was it? At 455?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's Mount Wesley Coast Road, southern branch of fork onto Poto Road.
Okay, yeah, 1 moment. Sorry, I can't. There's a lot
Sure,
of...
let me say it slower. Sorry. Mount Wesley Coast Road, southern branch of fork onto Kotor Road. So staff recommended 60k and the panel have recommended 80k.
Proposed 60 kilometers per hour to panel recommended speed of 80 kilometers per hour.
I think
Through the chair, can I verify that's correct, what we discussed
Yes.
before?
But do we need to put him with the view of further reviewing it with the Dargaville? No, keep it simple, right? No, that's fine. Yes.
Just through you, Chair, did we had a 5.2 as well? That was option 1.
Yes. Yeah.
5.2 at option 1.
Sorry, through the chair. Gavin, can you just take the U off Kotor on that bit that you've typed on? Pretty please. Thank you. Thanks.
Just through you, Chair, should the Mount Wesley read option 3, but the panel notes or recommends? Just for consistency.
Yes, it should be.
6.3 was that, Annan?
No, it's whatever point that Mount Wesley is. So I haven't got the document in front of me.
I'll need to see it. Sorry, NTA team, can you help me out here, please?
So through the chair, there were not multiple options given
Yes.
for this section. There was one option given at 60. However, 80 is a option available to the panel under the setting of speed limits rule and would be appropriate for that roadway.
What's the header title? 6, as you know how we've got 6.5.1.1. What is?
So through the chair, Mount Wesley Coast Road wasn't one of the header titles that we gave you. It's part of the table of the KDC Speed Review, Poto Peninsula and West Coast recommendations. And we would be amending that line on the table.
Okay.
Both in the recommendations
Page
report
46.
and the interim speed management plan.
And I think 5.2 doesn't give us an option there. It's for Poto School, and we've. Oh no.
There's 5.2. The is that the panel has gone with the recommended option? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we're only recording any amendments to what's been proposed.
Yeah. No, I think we've covered off everything there. I'm just cross-referencing and double-checking. Thank you. Are you in agreement, Councillor Wilson-Collins and Councillor Williams?
Yes.
NTA staff?
Yes.
I won't ask Annan because he doesn't have the documents in front of him that did cross-reference checks, but thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you happy with that, Mr. Dawson?
I think hopefully I've caught everything. This has been quite a full conversation to try and follow and capture.
You've caught everything, given.
Yep. And so I need to move that. So we'll move the recommendations that Mr. Dawson has typed up. Do I have a seconder? Wilson Collins. Thank you. Those in favour? Raise your hands. Aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Mr. Dawson, does that conclude everything we need to do here today?
that does indeed. And thank you everyone for your work today.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins, for your patience. I've made you a couple of minutes late, and everybody today, I'd like to thank you all. We've had a very cooperative panel here where we've managed to discuss and cover a lot of things off. So thank you very much, all of you. Cheers.
Thanks
Yeah.
again. Thank you. Bye.